Timeline too says, hello from White Rock, BC. That's never been there, never heard of it, but it sounds like a beautiful place. There's not too many places in BC that aren't beautiful, other than a few sites in some cities, but we'll clean that up. As the transaction fees go up, what is a recommended size for a UTXO? Another great question, and not something that I can easily answer. I'll just give you my advice here. I would say that you want to get a couple of UTXOs that are big. So again, let's say that you have one Bitcoin. I would suggest keeping like half it in one UTXO, 25% of it in another UTXO, and then keep those as like your very long-term storage. People might, disagree with that because they think it's too risky, too much in one spot, but I don't think so. I think that that's the best way to do it. And then from there, you can just kind of do whatever you want, because you also have to think of that one Bitcoin, how much do you think that you're going to spend in your lifetime? And if the answer is very little, then I would say it doesn't really matter. Because when you understand UTXOs and you understand, combining them to spend, that's when you run into issues. So if you had like 10 different UTXOs for 100,000 each, and you waited a couple of years, that would be 1 million sats you'd have to pay for 10 UTXOs, and it might not even be worth the cost at that time. But if you waited like say 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to be able to buy a lot more with your sats. So you might not need to spend all of those UTXOs and combine them for one transaction. You might be able to buy a lot of different things with 100,000 sats. Does that make sense? It's very hard to explain kind of verbally, but just think about what you're going to be spending on and when. Because again, if you have a UTXO for 100,000 sats and you're not going to be spending that for 10, 15, 20 beyond years, then you're probably good, because you have to think about how much you're going to be able to buy with that 100,000 sats. And if you don't actually have to combine a whole bunch to make that transaction, then it doesn't really matter. Right? And if you go even further than that and you think, okay, in 20 years from now, I'm going to be able to, let's just use this as an example. In 20 years from now, I'm going to be able to buy a house with 100,000 sats. So then you don't have to worry about your 10 UTXOs. You only need one of those that you have to spend. And let's say that you can buy a house with 100,000 sats, and people like to think that the fees are always going to be like, 5,000 sats, whatever it is, based on the sats per VByte there. But if a house is 100,000 sats, the fees to move that 100,000 sats are not going to be very much. So kind of a long tail answer there, long-winded, but just keep that in mind. Like, get a few very big UTXOs, and then just like, I wouldn't suggest moving less than 100,000 sats onto cold storage. But at the same time, keep in mind here that fees historically have always gone back down to 2 sats per VByte. Last week, they were 2 sats per VByte. So, to me, I think they're a lot safer in cold storage than on a Lightning wallet. So even if you're moving like 50,000 sats, 90,000 sats, you can always consolidate those later when the fees are low. So just don't obsess over it, but just be aware of how it works. And so then you can start, the other thing I would say on that is use the Sparrow wallet, because with the majority of wallets, you actually can't see your UTXOs in there. So if you're connected and if your interface is through Sparrow, then you're actually going to be able to see all of your UTXOs and manage them a lot easier than otherwise. Because you could have a Moon wallet, and unless there's like a new version that I haven't seen before, but you could have a Moon wallet and it might say that you had 50 million sats in there. But if you're somebody who DCAs and sends like 50,000 sats every week, that's going to be a nightmare to move out of there. And you have no idea that that's even there. It's like a ticking time bomb. In the Moon wallet, you can't actually see what's there. So again, don't obsess over it, be aware of it, and use Sparrow wallet to manage them. That's what I would say on that.